First story. My daughter mistakenly accused her stepbrother of saying her after being left out. I protected my daughter, but my entitled twin stepdaughters tried to ruin my daughter's life and then physically assaulted her. So I demanded my wife punish her daughter. She refused and justified it. So I got the stepson and his sister kicked out of the house. I 37F have been married to my wife 36F for 2 years. She has 3 kids, Illy 16M, and 12-year-old twin daughters, Harper and Riley. I have a daughter, Emily 14F, from my previous relationship. We blended our families a little over 2 years ago. It hasn't always been smooth, but this past year has been hell, and I honestly don't know if I'm being too strict or if everyone around me is losing their minds. Here's the context. My wife came out of an extremely toxic and dangerous first marriage. Her ex-husband was emotionally, physically, and deeply harmful to her and the kids, especially Eli. He went through things no child ever should. Without getting into too much detail, let's just say his childhood was taken from him. It left lasting trauma. He has a hard time trusting anyone. He rarely speaks unless he has to, doesn't like being touched, and avoids social interaction as much as possible. He's not interested in dating or relationships, and therapy is an ongoing part of his life. The twins are intensely protective of him. To the point where they act like his personal security team. They adore him, and in some ways, they see him as both a big brother and a parental figure. They have an almost telepathic bond. If he's upset, they know it instantly. They'll drop whatever they're doing to be with him. I used to admire it, but lately, I think it's become a little extreme. Emily has always been a little more high energy and sensitive. She was used to being an only child, and suddenly she's in this household where the emotional gravity centers around someone else. She started to feel left out, like she didn't belong. She's mentioned before that it feels like the 3 of them aren't their own family, and she's just the extra. I've tried to make sure she felt seen. But she started complaining more about Harper and Riley, saying they were dismissive, laughed at her, excluded her from things, and acted like she was beneath them. When I brought it up with my wife, she said it was normal kid stuff. And yeah, maybe it was. But it had an edge to it. I'd overhear them making snide little remarks. Subtle digs. That kind of thing. A few months ago, everything exploded. Emily told her school counselor that Ellie had been acting inappropriately around her, things like peeking at her while she was changing and saying inappropriate things. The school had no choice but to report it, and things moved fast. CPS was contacted, and Eli was questioned. It was awful. My wife was devastated. Eli shut down completely. I was torn. I didn't want to ignore my daughter, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Eli doesn't interact with anyone. He barely makes eye contact, let alone goes looking for attention. But I didn't want to make assumptions. Then the truth came out. Emily had written about 3 separate incidents in a journal. But every single one was investigated, and in all of them, there was clear proof Eli couldn't have been involved. One time the twins was with her the entire evening because of a minor health issue. Another time there was security footage showing Eli never left the downstairs area. The third time, he wasn't even home, he was at therapy. Eventually, Emily admitted she made the whole thing up. She said she was jealous. That Eli always got treated with care. That Harper and Riley looked at him like a hero, and she felt like the outsider. She didn't feel heard. She wanted things to be fair. I was horrified, furious, and deeply ashamed. We sat her down and made it clear how serious this was. She lost every privilege for a month, and we got her into counseling right away. I also had her write an apology letter, not to give to Elifa, but to process what she did and what the consequences could have been. Eli hasn't said a word to her since. He avoids the living room, the kitchen, pretty much anywhere she might be. My wife is trying to help him work through it. The twins, though, are a different story. They were enraged. They said Emily deserved to be sent away. That she was dangerous. That she tried to ruin their brother's life. They started calling her the liar and refused to be in the same room. I did my best to keep the peace, but honestly, the house became unbearable. I even suggested Emily and I stay with my sister for a while. My wife said no, that it was better if we all faced this and worked through it together. That was a mistake. Last week, on the last day of school, Harper and Riley waited for Emily outside a side exit. They cornered her, pulled her down, and physically attacked her. They struck her repeatedly on the thighs and lower back. They were yelling that they were giving her the lesson she needed. That they were correcting what she did. Emily came home crying, bruised, and shaken. I saw the marks myself, angry red and purple bruises across her legs and back. It was bad. I called the school, And they said it was off campus and on the last day, so there was nothing they could do. I called my wife immediately, and she said she wasn't going to punish them. That, in her words, they showed restraint. That they could have done worse. That they only targeted areas that wouldn't leave lasting damage. That this would teach Emily a life lesson. I was stunned. Not even a mild consequence. No grounding, no apology, nothing. Just, let it go. She doubled down and said, after what Emily did, this was light. She got a taste of what her lies could have done. We argued for hours. She said I was defending someone who almost ruined Eli's life. I said I wasn't excusing what Emily did, but letting kids beat each other is a line we shouldn't cross. I asked how she'd feel if the roles were reversed, if Emily had jumped one of the twins and left them bruised, shouting that they deserved it. She didn't answer that. I told her violence in response to a lie isn't justice. It's retaliation. I said we were setting a dangerous precedent, that if the twins feel justified, they'll act again. She said, they've never done anything like this before. This wasn't random. They've been patient, and this was personal. So now what? Emily won't leave her room unless I'm in the hallway. She flinches if she hears Harper and Riley's voices. She's humiliated and scared. Her therapist said we may need to move her temporarily if the environment doesn't settle. She asked me if we're still a family. I couldn't answer. Eli hasn't said anything about the attack, but he's gone further inward. I don't even think he knows how to process all this. Harper and Riley walk around like nothing happened. No remorse. No regret. I don't know if they even believe they did anything wrong. Maybe they don't. Maybe they think they fixed something. My wife and I barely talk. Everything feels like it's hanging by a thread. I'm trying to balance a lot here. I know what Emily did was awful. I know false accusations can destroy people. I made her face that, and I've worked hard to get her help. But now, she's the one being cornered and hurt, and I'm being told to just let it go. That the people who hurt her are still the ones in the right. I'm not okay with that. I want accountability. Not just for my daughter, but for the others too. Not because I hate them. Not because I want revenge. But because if this isn't stopped, I'm afraid the next time will be worse. But my wife says I'm being biased. That I'm protecting a liar and punishing kids who were defending someone who was nearly ruined. She says I'm the one who's creating division now. That I don't understand what Eli's been through, or how deep the wound went. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm too close to it. But I can't shake the feeling that if the roles were reversed, everyone would be calling Emily a monster. So, Reddit. Ada for insisting my wife punish her daughters for physically attacking mine, even though my daughter made a false report against their brother. Comments. Comment 1. Look, man. I've got kids. I get it. You did what you had to do when your daughter got fed up. And yeah, she really got fed up. False accusations are serious. She could have wrecked that boy. But here's the thing. You corrected her behavior. The system investigated and cleared the kid. You grounded her, got her therapy, and made her own it. Now what? The twins get to literally beat her and walk away like it's some justice mission. Nah, that's not justice. That's street law bullshit. And your wife? She's choosing her bio kids over your daughter. That's the raw truth. I know she loves Eli, that boy's been through hell. But she's letting that pain justify more violence. Here's what I'd do. Lay it out. Tell her it's not about the past anymore. It's about what's being allowed to happen now. If she won't parent them, then you have to. And if she blocks you from doing that, then sorry, you have to protect your kid first. Always. That's your job. Comment 2. I don't think enough people are addressing how dangerously normalized trauma responses have become in your household. Your wife has spent years protecting Eli, understandably. What he went through is horrific. But her emotional lens is now completely skewed. She sees Emily's lie not as a mistake, but as an attack. And she's letting her daughters respond as if they're acting in defense of the family's honor. That's not healthy. That's tribal. The twins didn't just snap, they planned to wait for Emily after school. That level of premeditated aggression, paired with no remorse, means they believe they were morally right to harm her. And your wife agrees. That's a massive red flag. You're being pushed into a position where trying to protect your daughter is seen as betrayal. And that's not a family, that's a survival zone. Please consider whether staying in this household is helping any of the kids heal. It might be time to pause the merge and separate households for a while. Let the adults actually do the emotional work needed to lead, instead of letting the kids shape the house by raw emotion and reactivity. This isn't going to fix itself. Someone has to be the adult here. Right now, that's you. Comment 3. OP, I don't think you have a discipline problem. I think you have a values mismatch with your wife, and that's a much bigger issue. You're both coming into this family with kids and trauma, and the way you two handle crises is wildly different. You responded to your daughter's lie with consequence and repair. Your wife is responding to her daughter's physical violence with nothing. Worse, she's justifying it. That's not a parenting difference. That's a moral one. You need to seriously evaluate how this relationship is functioning. If she won't hold her daughters accountable for physically attacking yours, how are you supposed to trust her as a co-parent? What happens next time? Do the twins escalate? Does Emily snap? This isn't about taking sides anymore. This is about safety. And your daughter is not emotionally or physically safe in that home right now. Your wife is refusing to protect her. I'd have an honest conversation with her and say that unless consequences are enforced across the board, you can't continue living together. This isn't blended family friction. This is foundational misalignment. Update. So I wasn't expecting the kind of response I got. A lot of you basically called me out not just on the situation, but on me. And I've been sitting with that. I've read every response multiple times. I'm not going to pretend it didn't sting. But I also didn't come here to be agreed with blindly. Some of you are right. Some of you are wrong. Some of you don't understand the day-to-day reality of this house. I'm not asking for validation, but I am going to explain the next part clearly. After the attack, the house was completely unlivable emotionally. Everyone was tense, and nobody spoke unless necessary. Emily stayed in her room most of the time. The twins walked around like nothing had happened. Ellie stayed upstairs. My wife and I barely spoke, except for short sentences about schedules or groceries. But the thing that pushed this into the next stage was therapy. I scheduled a family session because I thought if we could get everything in the open with someone neutral, we could at least start repairing something. It didn't go well. At first, my wife tried to be cautious about her wording. But when the therapist asked her directly if she believed the twins did something wrong, she hesitated. And that hesitation was the answer. She said she understood their reasoning and didn't want to punish them for protecting their brother. The therapist turned to the twins and asked how they felt about what happened. Harper said she didn't regret it. Riley said if Emily ever tried something again, she'd do it worse. Then Emily started crying. She said she felt like everyone in the house hated her and wanted her gone. She said she didn't feel safe. She said she didn't trust that the adults would step in if something else happened. And then she said the thing that hit everyone. I didn't lie because I wanted to hurt him. I lied because I wanted someone to look at me the way everyone looks at him. My wife's face went blank. Eli dropped his shoulders and stared at the floor. The twins rolled their eyes. The therapist just sat still for a second. It was the first real truth spoken in months. I know a lot of commenters said Emily is manipulative, evil, and beyond repair. But I don't think she is. I think she's a kid who is losing her place in her own home. I'm not excusing what she did, I never have. But I see where it came from. And I'm her mother. I will understand her, even when she's wrong. After therapy, my wife was frustrated. She felt like the therapist was minimizing Eli's trauma. I reminded her no one is minimizing what he went through. But that what the twins did can't be brushed aside. We tried a mediation session a week later. That one was worse. My wife was defensive. I was defensive. Emily was shutting down. The therapist brought up the possibility of temporarily separating living arrangements to reduce conflict and tension. My wife viewed that as punishing the wrong children. I realized in that moment, we don't parent from the same logic anymore. So I made a decision. For now, we're still in the same house. But I moved Emily into the downstairs guest room and shifted the household structure. We're essentially parallel parenting under the same roof. I handle Emily. My wife handles her kids. Schedules, meals, and spaces are separate. Minimal crossover. This isn't ideal. It's not warm. But right now, it prevents anything escalating further. And yes, it has escalated in other ways. The twins started telling kids at school what Emily did and calling her dangerous to be around. I found out because Emily's therapist flagged it when Emily mentioned not wanting to return to school in the fall. My wife said the twins were just telling the truth. I told her that spreading the story is just another way to punish Emily. She disagreed again. Then my ex-Emily's father called me furious. He said he wanted full custody. Said Emily was being raised in a hostile environment. Said the twins assaulted her. And my wife did nothing. And legally, he has a point. I hired a lawyer. Not to fight him necessarily, but to protect the situation. The lawyer told me if I want to keep any custody at all, I have to demonstrate I'm actively protecting Emily's safety and emotional stability. Meaning I need documented therapy records, household safety adjustments, conflict management steps, and a clear written plan for preventing further incidents. Basically, I had to start creating evidence that I wasn't neglecting my responsibility as her parent. Which meant I had to admit, on paper, that my house is unsafe as it is. That forced my wife into a corner. Because when the lawyer drafted a household safety plan, one of the required elements was consequences for physical harm by any child in the home. And my wife still refused to punish the twins. So now we're here. We sleep in separate rooms. We cook separate meals. We parent separately. We barely talk, except through text. The kids are in therapy individually. Family therapy is on hold because the therapist said the environment is too unstable for productive joint work. And here is the part where I am fully aware some of you will judge me. I do, and always will, put my kid first. Yes, she lied. Yes, it caused real harm. Yes, she needed consequences and accountability. I made sure she got both. But she is still my daughter. She is still a child. And I will not be the mother who abandons her when she messes up. My wife thinks punishment is what keeps kids from repeating harm. I think being understood and claimed is what prevents kids from becoming permanently broken. We are not aligned. And I don't know if we come back from this. If you want honesty. No one in this house is the bad guy. But no one is safe here either. I don't know what the next step is, but it's no longer wait and hope it resolves. It's choosing which future hurts less. Comments. Comment 1. Let's get real. You're not being the bigger person here. You're rationalizing the hell out of what your daughter did. She falsely accused someone of seriously inappropriate behavior. That's not cry for attention territory, that's life-altering, criminal-sounding stuff. You keep saying, she's a child, and she wanted to feel seen. But dude, kids don't just come up with those accusations out of nowhere. That's manipulative. That's dangerous. At the same time, the twins going full mob justice isn't okay either. 12 or not, they planned a full-blown ambush. No amount of trauma gives anyone the right to physically assault another kid. Your wife's hands-off parenting, and they were just defending their brother line is straight-up negligent. You two are living under one roof, but acting like rival camp leaders. Everyone in that house is getting more broken by the day. My advice: stop pretending this is salvageable with guest rooms and separate dinner schedules. Either go for full custody with your daughter and leave, or get serious family intervention with all the kids. Right now, you're just spinning plates while the house is burning down. Comment 2. I think you're one of the few people who actually came back with an update that doesn't pretend they fixed anything, and I respect that. But I also think you're still too deep in it to see the real rot. From where I'm sitting, the core problem isn't Emily's lie or the twins' retaliation, it's your and your wife's refusal to be on the same team. You both have valid reasons to feel protective. You both have trauma tied to your kids. But when one parent sees your daughter as a threat, and the other sees the twins as time bombs, you don't have a blended family. You have a house full of landmines. Emily doesn't feel safe. The twins feel like justice is up to them. Eli's drowning in silence. Your wife's parenting comes from trauma and loyalty. You're parenting from guilt and damage control. No one in that house feels truly parented. You said, no one is the bad guy. But right now, the bad guy is passivity. Your choice to stay and parallel parent just lets the resentment deepen. Separation isn't the worst thing here, silence is. Decide if you're staying for peace or out of fear. Then take action. But this limbo isn't protecting anyone. Comment 3. All right, I'm going to say the thing no one else here seems to be touching. Your wife never forgave your daughter. And she never will. You keep trying to find middle ground, but she drew her line in the sand a long time ago and Emily's on the wrong side of it. The moment your daughter made that accusation, true or not, she was cast out emotionally. Your wife tolerates Emily now. Nothing more. That's why she defended the twins. That's why she let the physical attack slide. And that's why she's still resisting accountability. She doesn't see Emily as family. She sees her as a threat to hers. And here's the real kicker, you still want to fix this. You still think if you just manage the rooms and meals and therapy appointments right, it'll all level out. It won't. You've got one shot here. Leave before the next hit lands. Because there will be another hit. Whether it's emotional, social, or physical, Emily's going to get hurt again. Not because your wife's evil, but because she won't protect a kid she no longer sees as hers. Protect your kid before this becomes irreversible. Update. It has been just over a year since everything happened. I've read the old thread again before writing this, and I already know this update is not going to sit right with most people. But I promised myself I would be honest and not rewrite history to look better than it is. The short version is, I stayed with my wife. Emily lives with her dad now. The twins are getting ready to move out soon, and Eli moved out several months ago. The house is quieter now, different. And I won't pretend I don't think about how we got here, but I also won't pretend I regret where we are now. So let me break down what happened after the last update. After the family sessions went nowhere, CPS did follow up because Emily's therapist submitted a wellness concern. The CPS worker interviewed everyone again. They did not remove any children from the home, and they did not open an ongoing case. Their conclusion was that while the home was emotionally divided, there was no current physical risk, because the assault incident had already been addressed medically, and there was no ongoing violence. The CPS worker recommended continued therapy and household separation of emotional responsibilities, which is a professional way of saying we should keep the parallel parenting structure we were already doing. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just more paperwork and another reminder that this was our new normal. Around that same time, Emily told me she didn't want to come back home when she stayed at her dad's for a week. She said she felt tired. She said being in the house made her feel like she was always defending herself, even when she wasn't talking. And she said being with her dad felt lighter. I want to be very careful in how I say this next part, because people will interpret it however they want. I did not beg her to come back. I did not fight for joint custody like people expected me to. I let her go. Not because I didn't love her, but because I could finally see that our home wasn't a place she could grow. And because, if I'm brutally honest, I was exhausted from fighting for her to be seen in a house that wasn't built around her. Her father has stability now. He's remarried. His wife is calm and practical. Their house is structured. Emily needed that. And I could either cling to the idea of fixing everything, or I could make a decision that protected her long term. I chose the second one. Does that mean I feel good about it? No. But I do think it was right. After Emily left, the tension in the house didn't disappear, but it stopped escalating. The twins stopped watching their shoulders. My wife stopped walking like every room was going to turn into an argument. Eli stopped waiting for the next emotional collision. Which brings me to Eli. He turned 17 and moved in with his aunt. It wasn't dramatic. He just said he needed a space where he wasn't the reason everyone else was reacting to everything. He and my wife still see each other. They go to breakfast once a week. Their relationship is better now that he's not here. The twins are different. They're 13 now. They are still close to each other, but the intensity around Eli has settled since he's no longer physically here for them to orbit. They have more of their own identity, now clubs, friends, interests. They're talking about applying for an arts-focused high school program next year and moving into student housing when they're 15. It's not unusual in our area. They're excited. My wife is proud. And I'm stable. Not healed, not redeemed, not right all along. Just stable. My wife and I are still married. People assume after something like this that the marriage becomes cold. It didn't. In some ways, it got stronger. Because we stopped pretending we were trying to merge two families equally. We accepted that the kids had different histories, different needs, and different wounds, and that trying to force symmetry was ruining all of them. And here's the part that will probably get quoted and dragged. I do resent Emily for what she started, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I understand why she did it. I understand the loneliness that fueled it. I don't think she's a monster. But I also can't ignore that her lie detonated something that was already cracking. And I can't ignore that life got calmer after she left. Do I hate her? No. Do I like who I became because of that situation? Also no. But I've accepted that I don't get to have the version of motherhood I thought I would have. I get the one that exists. And sometimes that means stepping back instead of forcing myself into the center. The twins will move out in a couple of years. My wife and I have talked realistically about what life looks like after that. It's just going to be us. And yes, I know what people say about choosing a partner over your child. I've heard every version of that sentence in every tone imaginable. But when you've lived through a household where every hallway felt like a fault line, the idea of being with someone who stays, who understands the full context, who walked through the same fire as you, that matters. People leave. Kids grow up and make their own lives. And sometimes, painfully, they grow away from you. The person who stays is the one you build with. Some people will call that selfish. And maybe it is. But this is the life that is real. And it is calmer now. Not perfect. Not how I imagine. But livable. Soft sometimes. Manageable most days. And when it's hard, it's just hard. Not catastrophic. I can live with that. And I do. Comments. Comment 1. What really gets me is that you're calling this stability. That's not peace. That's emptiness. You didn't just let Emilia go. You abandoned her emotionally before she left physically. You didn't fight because it was easier to let her slip away than confront your wife again. I think deep down you know that. You say you resent her for what she started. But let's be honest, your family was already fractured. That girl didn't start a war. She exposed that there was never a foundation under the merge in the first place. And once it cracked, you chose your wife and her kids because it was less work than rebuilding trust with your own. So now you've got a quiet house, sure. But the cost was a daughter who will remember that her mum left her in the fallout. You are saying life is manageable now. But do you ever wonder what kind of person you had to become to make it feel that way? Comment 2. I'm going to go a different direction than most. I don't think you're an arsey hole, and I don't think you're heartless. But I think you made a trade. You had a daughter who made a catastrophic mistake out of loneliness and insecurity, and instead of treating her like a flawed, scared child who needed rebuilding, you treated her like an interruption to the peace you wanted. You're right, it is hard to blend families. But the moment you decided to stop forcing symmetry, you also stopped trying to protect her. That doesn't make you the worst parent alive, but it means you made a calculated decision to prioritize the household over her place in it. She's not going to forget that. She may even thrive in her dad's house, but that scar will stay. The absence of a parent hurts more than the presence of conflict. And one day, when you want a relationship again, you might find the doors closed not because she hates you, but because she finally learned to stop waiting for you to fight for her. Comment 3. You know what? I respect the honesty. You're not trying to sanitize it. You're not pretending everyone healed. You just laid it out like it is, and I think more parents should admit when they're not cut out for certain fights. I'm not going to call you a bad mom, but I am going to call you out on your self-preservation instinct. You found your line. When the house got too volatile, you chose the partner who gave you ground under your feet. You didn't fight for joint custody because some part of you knew Emily would do better away from the war zone. But let's not pretend you sacrificed. You also benefited. You get the peace. Your wife gets her kids. And Emily got a reset. Without you. It's not a happy ending. It's a functional one. But don't delude yourself into thinking the quiet means the pain's gone. That girl's going to carry that choice for the rest of her life. And so will you. Second story. I'm glad my brother got scammed out of his house by his girlfriend. And I think she deserved it. Now my mom is demanding that I help my brother sue his girlfriend. But I couldn't give a flying EFF, he deserves worse. I 37F have an older brother, George 45M, who isn't an idiot, but he can be lazy. Definitely the type to rely on weaponized incompetence whenever women and girls are around. Example. He literally acted like he didn't know where our mum kept the paper plates in the house he lived in for nearly 20 years just so she'd get up, go into the kitchen, and make him his plate during the holidays, just 1 week post her bunion surgery. Side note, they both tried to passively aggressively make me feel guilty for not offering to fix my adult brothers so our mum wouldn't have to do it. Like I wasn't the only one doing most of the cooking and would be doing most of the cleaning afterwards. At age 30, George was given a windfall from our grandfather's estate. I got something too and used it as a down payment for a nice 5-bedroom house that is easily worth double now. During this time he met Melinda 50F, and she was a nice lady. Smart, responsible, hardworking, sweet, and very organized. She came into the relationship with a steady job and was upfront about her lack of ability to have more children after complications from nearly losing her life giving birth to her daughter. George stated that he was okay with that. But whenever Melinda would bring up his hesitation regarding marriage, he'd say that he had complicated feelings about not being able to be a father if he chose to fully commit to her, and that he needed to process. Saying that since he was willing to look over her fertility issues because he loved her, she needed to show her love by waiting for him. That line worked for 12 years. After Melinda moved in, George demanded that she pay half the bills and part of his mortgage in exchange for allowing Melinda's daughter to move in with her. At the time, Melinda had few options, as her former landlord was raising the rent too high, and she was helping pay for her sister's medical bills. Melinda and George justified it to everyone by saying what she would have had to pay to George was still cheaper in rent than at her old place. I said nothing because it's not my relationship. 2 years ago, George was caught cheating, and Melinda was furious, and then left. I don't know all the details, but she came back seeming to work things out. Didn't stop George from cheating, but Melinda shrugged and said that this was still a better deal, and so long as he kept it from the house, she'd cope. Recently, there was some type of damage to George's house, and he needed people to come in and fix it. But he hated the labor of searching for a reliable contractor and taking time away from his job/hobbies to deal with them and the paperwork. Melinda offered to do it, and he didn't question it. Whatever she gave, he signed, and in front of third-party witnesses. Melinda got George to sign paperwork, stating that she was entitled to 45% of his house. Now she's dumped him and is demanding that George either sell his house or buy her out. George is trying to fight this, citing that he didn't fully understand what he was agreeing to, and he's found a lawyer willing to take his case, but his fees are expensive. George and our mum think that I should help, but I'm refusing. I don't see why I have to shell out thousands to save another grown man from his own lack of foresight, especially when there's a good chance he won't even win. I'm being called heartless and a bad sister, so I have to ask Ada? Comments. Comment 1. NTA George had it coming. Stringing that woman along for years, manipulating her by making her feel guilty over not being able to have more children, having her pay half the mortgage for his house, and then cheating on her. He made the bed. Let him lie in it. Comment 2. Bro's help is where the paper plates always were. Comment 3. NTA. Your brother is a cheater and a fool. Was Melinda a bit underhanded? Arguably yes. Does she deserve a share of the house in return for all she paid into it? Not to mention 12 years of domestic and emotional labor. Arguably also yes. But when it comes to whether you should shell out for your brother's legal fees, the answer is an unequivocal no. He was a huge and ridiculously careless with his most significant asset, and it's not your responsibility to fix. He's an adult. He needs to fix his own mistake. Comment 4. I think OP needs to join Team Melinda and learn how to underhandedly make sure her mother's will is fair and that her assets are locked up now. I feel like the brother is on the path to convince Mum to hand over his inheritance early so he can deal with Melinda. Tale as old as time. Parents give the golden man-child money, and the other child is left scrambling to pay for their parents' medical expenses. Judgment NTA. Update. Quick recap. Brother and mother are trying to guilt me into giving my brother money to pay for an attorney, in order to prevent brother's former long-term/live-in girlfriend from getting a payout after he claims she tricked him into signing documents making her a partial owner. Okay, there's been an update, and I have to say, while I still don't think my brother is an idiot overall, he is a lazy and very arrogant dumbarst. I also wanted to clarify a few things as well. Melinda and my brother were in a relationship for 12 years. But they only started living together for about 9-10 years. Also, the documents were signed in the presence of a notary who asked my brother if he understood the context of the documents, and he affirmed that he did. And to the person who said that my brother was house poor, you hit the nail on the hammer. My brother spent the majority of his inheritance and savings on buying that house, and it barely had any furniture in it. When Melinda moved in, she paid to have it furnished on top of splitting the utilities and paying rent. Now on to the new stuff. When my brother's house needed fixing, he let Melinda do the grunt work of finding reputable establishments to consider, because he didn't want to be bothered. Melinda presented him with up to 3 options, and convinced him to go with Company, a not the real name, because they were offering seasonal discounts for first-time customers and/or new owners for specific items. Melinda's plan to get both discounts was to present it as if she recently became the partial owner, and have my brother email Company A to see if they'd be willing to accept that. Company A responded that if Melinda recently became part owner of the house, then they'd be willing to give a partial discount as a courtesy. Company A was a small business, but with an excellent reputation in terms of service, quality of work, and meeting deadlines, so my brother was all in. What my brother didn't realize was that Company A went by the honor system when it came to Melinda and my brother's case. But on their website, it did say proper documents needed to be shown. So Melinda told my brother that she'd come up with fake documents that he could sign in the presence of a notary that she knew through a friend who was supposed to be in on the scam. They weren't. But that's what she told my brother. The actual signing was at their home in front of the notary and 2 people from Company A who were initially there to survey the area. So basically my brother thought that he and Melinda were scamming Company A, when in reality Melinda was scamming him. He thought the documents he was signing were fake, but they were real, and that's his defense. This is why he had trouble finding a lawyer. Wouldn't blame anyone here who thought that this was fake, because what the F. So anyway, I'm not going to give him the money, but I will give him a list of realtors. Comments. Comment 1. So his defense is, I thought we were scamming a company. But really she was scamming me, Your Honor. Yeah, I think it's best to stay out of this one. OP. I almost peed myself when I laughed. Comment 2. Are you taking your brother's word for how the legal paper situation can be, or have you talked to his ex? I'll bet their explanations are not even similar. Comment 3. It sounds like your brother is having the day he deserves. Still NTA. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.